Welcome to our so-called intensive. I had forgotten what the title of our intensive was, and I just realized when I was waiting there, I believe he said the secret of happiness. Well, it's an interesting topic. For lack of a better word, we call our gathering intensive. Although you may well ask, what can possibly be intensive about just sitting here for a few hours and listening to somebody? Usually when you think of intensive, it involves perhaps physical movement, jumping up and down, emotional expression, catharsis, screaming, weeping. That's intense or intensive. Or it could involve intensive use of the mind. So if it's not intensive physically, it's not intensive emotionally. This is not to say that you may not have occasionally emotions passing through your body while you sit here. And if it's not intensive mentally, because we are not going to discuss deep philosophical problems or mathematical problems or whatever other problems the mind can create to entertain itself, then what's intensive about this gathering? It's not in the physical realm of movement or doing. It's not in the emotional realm. It's not in the mental realm. So if you're here expecting emotional, physical, mental stimulation, you will be disappointed, because we are not here to add anything to the mind. We are not here to add content to the already considerable accumulation of content that is in everybody's mind. We are here to access a dimension of consciousness that has nothing to do with the content in your mind. You cannot access that dimension of consciousness through thought. And yet, to some extent, thought plays a subsidiary function here for us, because some thought is operating, because thought is required for these words to come out of this mouth. But these words are not what this is all about. It is not the main thing here. The words are only pointers or signposts. Pointing to a dimension that is present in every human being already, but usually completely, we could say, overlooked. It is, that dimension is already present in each and every one of you. And yet, the tendency is for the human being to be so fascinated by the content of their lives, which includes your external situation, the physical realm, the things that surround you, things that happen, one thing after another. Content is what happens externally and internally. Internally, it is the movement of thought, it's the content, and the emotions that accompany those thoughts. So everybody is fascinated, almost we could say hypnotized, by the content of their lives, and they call that accumulation of content things, forms, physical forms, thought forms, sense perceptions. They all form one kind of form of or another. And so this accumulation of content, usually people refer to as my life. And when you say my life, you have already transformed your life and yourself into content. My life, you've already split life into two bits, life and me. I have a life. That means there's life somewhere there, and then there's me, and I have it. And the moment you believe that you have life, then of course you could also lose it. And then what's left when you lose it? Who are you if you're not alive? So the realm of content is not what matters here. And that includes the words that are spoken here. Now you may have noticed, or you may not, depends how hypnotized you are by content, you may have noticed that there are words being spoken here But there's also something else here, and that's a background to the words, and we could call that there is a stillness or silence here also. Oh, I hadn't noticed that. Yeah, but now you do. That silence was here all the time, underneath and in between the words. But perhaps you were only focused on the words, not focused on the space, the silent space, out of which the words continuously come. So as a first step into this consciousness that has nothing to do with content, as the first step, we notice that here there's sound, words, and there is an underlying silence also. Now, if you were totally fascinated by the words only, very quickly, here, sitting here, you would arrive at a point of frustration. Because the words in themselves are not that interesting. They're only a help to get you, they're only pointers to get you to that other dimension. So if you were never able to even notice that there is a stillness here also, then it would become frustrating to sit here for very long, because the words are not that interesting, not some exciting new ideas, but only pointers. So for this intensive to work for you, I suggest as the first step, notice this dimension that we could call stillness or silence, that is there underneath the words, in between the words. Now, it's a strange thing when I say notice the silence. Something happens to you. These words are pointers. I say notice the silence. Now observe what happens inside you when you hear these words, and there's a shift then. Your attention moves. Before, your attention was on form, the words. Now your attention is on nothing. Not a thing. No thing. Your attention, for a moment, when you just notice silence, you become still inside. In the very moment of noticing silence, the mind has also become silent, because only the silence in you can notice the silence out there. Thought cannot notice silence, completely unaware of that dimension, because thought is noise, thought is form, mental formations. So form cannot know, doesn't even know it exists, the formless dimension, which right now we call silence. When it's the inner, we could call it stillness. So thinking has no idea of silence or stillness. For the thinking mind, it does not exist. because the thinking mind is form. And when you are totally trapped in the world of form, then the deeper dimension, the only thing that can free you from being bound to the world of form, does not exist for you. You are then totally trapped in content. Seeking happiness in the things of your life. So we notice that there is a silence in this room. The moment you notice it, in that moment you are not thinking. And if you can sit here and pay equal attention to the words and to the silence, then a deeper dimension is arising as you sit here. And you may notice, after a little while, the mind may say something about the silence, or says something that has nothing to do with anything that's here. And then you can take your attention back to the silence. And what that also means, I call it, you become present. You totally inhabit this moment. It is only in the cessation, which means stopping, of mind, that you can be fully present here and now. And this is an amazing thing. And so we are here in this intensive because in almost each one of you, there may be one or two exceptions, people who didn't come voluntarily here, husband or wife or boyfriend or girlfriend dragged them here and they said, you need to come and listen. Now, with the exception of those people, but even there miracles are possible, this dimension is already arising in you. Otherwise, you would already be extremely frustrated sitting here. The body would start to twitch and move. And you would start looking around. Can't stand it anymore here. So it is already arising, and here, that's why you have come here, and this is a deepening process. And the reality, of course, of intensive is, you learn here that the rest of your life is also the intensive. So when we finish here, the intensive continues, and it's called your life. Of course, that's just words.